Another weekend of bowl action. 8 bowl games over the weekend is what we were blessed to see. We got one earlier today in the G5. Their bowl reign is about to come to a close following New Year's Day. We'll preview a couple of those bowl games, but man, well, man, we have a lot to still talk about. The portal is running rampant. JMU, North Texas, a lot of their roster has been axed, and most of them will enter the portal. We'll preview a lot of that and more here on the Southern Sports Scene. Welcome on in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lucas Hill, joined by my good friend, as always, every Monday night, our G5 insider, Garrett Armbrust. Garrett, again, man, thank you for hopping on, man. We've had a hell of a weekend in bowl season. We got a very, very damn good game in New Mexico. Better than some of the other P4 games that got a lot of primetime attention. But Garrett, my friend, how are you this weekend? How was your Christmas?
Yeah, doing good, man. Appreciate you having me on. Good Christmas. Good to be home with the family. Watch a lot of football and ready for all the New Year's games coming up. As you said, bowl game today. So kind of just firing through the end of bowl season. Got a little bit of a cold, so if my voice is not 100% right now, that would be the reason why. But hopefully you can hear me fine.
We can hear you just fine, my friend. But like we mentioned, as always, make sure you all do us a favor. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notification so that you are notified every time we go live. Post a new short or post a new video here on the Southern Sports Scene. As always, we want to thank our friends over at FrostBuddy. Going over to frostbuddy.com. Use our promo code SSS15 for 15% off of your first purchase on all things tumblers, on all things mugs, whatever it is, ladies and gentlemen. FrostBuddy has it. Also want to thank our friends at Chike Nutrition. The new year is coming up soon, but why not get a head start into your fitness journey and living your best life in 2026 and starting your day off right with some great tasting coffee using our friends at Chike Nutrition, the best protein iced coffee on the market. 20 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, 1 gram of fat. Take advantage of the deals that they have over there. Use the link below and get yourself 10% off of your first purchase. Garrett, let's preview all of what we had to see on Saturday, but I want to start it off really before we get to Saturday. And I want to kind of briefly touch on this bowl game, which I thought a dandy of a bowl game. And that would be New Mexico and Minnesota in that one. The Rate Bowl. Look, this was one of those games that I know a lot of people were going to say was going to come down to the wire. And I expected this one to be one of those games. And I looked at Minnesota, and I was very high on a guy like Jason Eck. I mean, shoot, I had a tweet on it earlier in the year that went absolutely insane. Guys, Jason Eck proved himself why he's a P4 level type of head coach, and New Mexico is very lucky to have him around, sticking around in the Albuquerque area. Tough for them to lose in a tight one to a team like Minnesota, which biggest thing that New Mexico struggled with, which is shutting a guy like this. Carry he had play after play that he made throughout that football game, that he was just making ridiculous runs, and he was slowing the tempo of the game down so that Mexico really wouldn't have much opportunity in the last couple of minutes. Obviously, that turned out to be the case. But the last 3 games of the season, New Mexico's defense has stepped up in big ways, especially after that UNLV game. This has been one of the best defenses in all the Mountain West Conference. Garrett, talk a little bit about this game, what you saw from the standpoint on the field, and then I'll give my takes on it as well. But what did you see from New Mexico that kind of caught your eye against that Minnesota team and PJ Fleck?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, they've been a team defensively that's been, pretty solid all season. Been able to create some turnovers, obviously. Jack Lane has been a solid quarterback. Obviously, you kind of saw the 2 quarterback system that they were running. He was kind of more the pass guy. Then they had their QB2 come in for more of a, read option plays and rushing attempts, to kind of get the ground moving. They got a lot of guys, though, on that offense that can play. Dorian Thompson, a tight end. He's obviously in the transfer portal now, but he was one of the better tight ends this year in the G5. Keegan Johnson, a really good wide receiver, former P4 player. They just have a lot of guys, and this is after rebuilding pretty much their entire offense from last season. Obviously, when Bronco Mendenhall was there last season, they had Devin Dampier and Eli Sanders and Luke Wysong and names like that. So to be able to rebuild this offense with a completely new staff this season, very impressive. And then, obviously, as you said, on the defensive side of the ball, been one of the better defenses really in the G5. Minnesota, obviously, played pretty well. Drake Lindsay had a pretty nice game. Jalen Smith, one of their freshman wide receivers, obviously game-winning touchdown. He had a good game as well. And then it's obviously tough to stop that run game with Darius Taylor. But, no, I was really impressed with New Mexico's season. I really thought they should have won that game. Still a little bit confused why they ran that fake punt there at the end. It didn't really affect them too much, but went into OT either way, but just kind of seemed like a gamble that they didn't really need to take there. That I think if they could have gone back, they probably wouldn't have done that.
I thought from an offensive standpoint, I thought that they were going to take a step backwards. Obviously, losing a guy like Devon Dampier to Utah, and you see the type of magic that he is creating for that Utah offense and what he did this past year. That was an offense that I thought was really going to kind of take big step back, bigger than what I expected. I'm not going to say necessarily they did. Do I think that they didn't have an answer at times? And would you like to have a guy like Devin Dampier in New Mexico right now? Yes, absolutely. But did it go back and bite them a little bit? No. I think an improved defense would have been better for Bronco Mendenhall last year compared to what Jason Eck and Spence Nowinski has done so far this year. Spence Nowinski, a former defensive coordinator with Memphis last year. And if you remember what Memphis's defense did last with what Silverfield and company was able to do, I thought that they were really impressive at times. Do I think that they gave up explosive plays? Yes. But I think down the stretch, when you're able to shut down offenses like Tulane and limit teams like South Florida and what West Virginia did at the end of the year, those were big examples as to why, Eck decided to go with a guy like Spence Nowinski and just showcasing what he can put on display as a play caller defensively. He's done some really good things this year, mixing up different schemes. He's got some dudes there too. Maverick Baranowski, stand the F up and take a bow. Dude, never mind. I was from Minnesota. Jameer Torres and Dimitri Johnson, stand up, man. I mean, two guys that Dimitri Johnson, the stats aren't eye-popping, but I thought he had arguably his best game of the year this past Friday, and really laid his mark throughout his career at New Mexico. 6 tackles and a sack. Had a huge one early on in the football game, and I was a big impact type of guy over the course of that football game. I thought Minnesota really didn't do that great of a job putting together consistent drives, but it goes back to who made the fewest mistakes when it was all said and done. New Mexico isn't able to put it together on their next possession or on their first possession of overtime, and Minnesota takes advantage of it. You had a lot of drives where you have to settle for 3, and you have opportunities to go down and get 6 on the board. You have those games against the P4. Did I lose you?
Yeah, you just came back. What were you saying?
I just said that you can't have missed opportunities like you did in that football game where you have to go down the field and you have to settle for 3 after putting together decent drives when you could have had 6 in the red zone.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, as you said, when you're playing a Power Four opponent, yeah, you can't leave points, you can't leave empty possessions, especially in a game. Obviously, that came down to overtime. Any of those field goals that they could have turned into touchdowns would have won the game for them in regulation. So, I mean, just basically what you said, you got to make the most out of every drive that you have when you're playing, an opponent like that.
Let's talk about the Serve Pro First Responder Bowl, FIU and UTSA. And UTSA's offense came to play. And obviously been a disappointing year for Jeff Traylor and company. That was a team that I thought early on. And I know a couple of guys that actually had UTSA as being that group of 5 team that could be a player in the college football playoff. Obviously, that did not come to fruition. Had some games where defensively you were just let down. You didn't have consistent games when you're going up against top offenses like South Florida and North Texas did this year, where you're giving up 55 points. Go to Texas A&M where you struggle. Texas State with G.J. Kinney's offense just hasn't had the most spectacular of years for UTSA. But you saw a lot of guys that are going to make their names very well known, potentially, if they decide to enter the transfer portal. That I wrote down my eye, and he was mentioned briefly on the broadcast. Patrick Overmeyer, the tight end, 6'5", 235, really came into his own over the weekend. What do you think of his performance?
Yeah, really good performance from him. Obviously, tight end's kind of one of those positions on the offensive side of the ball you don't maybe give enough love to. Not a whole lot of explosive plays, a lot of dirty work with blocking and whatnot that comes from the tight end position. But yeah, that guy's a really good player, especially with all the skill position players that you have on that team with Devin McEwen and Robert Henry and all those guys, Amador. The tight end position probably not getting the amount of love that they should, but he had a great game and it's been a great player for them much of this season.
First team All-American or freshman All-American, according to The Athletic. I would definitely be looking forward to seeing somebody like him in the portal. And to be honest with you, if it's not anytime soon, it's going to happen. Yeah, I know that there's already been a couple of UTSA players that have already put their name in the transfer portal. When you talk about a guy like Vic Shaw, who was pretty good edge rusher out for UTSA, you had a couple of DBs that entered their names. Still waiting on word at Banks and company. How about Owen, man? You a guy that really had a down type of season this year. That would be Owen McCown. And part of it wasn't his fault. It's been a lapse of what happened defensively. Here was a guy that in the middle of the season really was playing his worst football after the Colorado State and Temple game, 2 games where you look at the type of talent that UTSA had, and you're not supposed to have those games end up going the way that they did. You split a game at 1 apiece, and he's just not playing his best football. Gets hurt in the North Texas game, and then comes back and puts together a really efficient second half of the season. Talk to me about him, how he's progressed throughout the season, and what he could potentially bring if he does decide to return back to San Antonio.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was when I did my preseason rankings, I had him as the number 1 American quarterback over the summer going into the year. Obviously, that was before Mestemaker won the job at North Texas. Wasn't 100% sure about what Byron Brown was going to be coming off injury. Obviously, both of those quarterbacks performed at a higher level throughout the season. But I mean, I thought McGowan had a lot of good games. Obviously, that Tulane game where they scored a lot of points. What was that, early November? That was one of his better games of the season, if not his best. And then obviously another good game here. Gunslinger quarterback. But, I think part of it was at the beginning of the season, too. He didn't really have to rely as much on his arm. I mean, Robert Henry, through 4 weeks in the season, was leading FBS in rushing yards. So you were kind of able to use the ground game a little bit. And then Henry got kind of banged up as the season went on. You saw the passing game, obviously. They start using that more. And anytime in a trailer offense, you're going to see the passing game involved a lot. But to be able to score 50 points on FIU, pretty impressive. And I'm pretty sure McCowan, obviously, is excited to run it back next year. Already announced that he'll be back with UTSA next fall. So I'm excited to see what they can do again next year, because they were a team that I thought had a chance to play for the American title game this year. Obviously, a little bit of a letdown, but Traylor's a winner, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them make a run for it next year if they can pick up some pieces in the portal.
How about Willie Simmons and FIU? You talk about a team that last year was 4-8, won a total of 8 games the last 2 years this season. They win 7 games in the first year of the Willie Simmons era, a guy that's been a legend out in the HBCU coaching sphere, a national champion at Florida A&M after 1 year at the running backs coach at Duke, goes to FIU, and a team that lost so much talent to to the big time Division I schools. We talk about losing Dean Patton, Eric Rivers, 2 guys that I had as the 2 top 5 receivers in last year's transfer portal. And then you see the results on the field. You have a 3-5 start, and a lot of people wrote them off. And then you're able to have the stretch where you beat Liberty in overtime and you end up pulling off a massive upset against Jacksonville State to get yourself bowl bound. Just an impressive season overall, and really a lot to look forward to in the next few years of the Simmons era. The problem is that you're still going to lose a lot in the portal.
Right. Yeah, no, a very impressive season for him this year. You know, as a guy you said came from the HBCU ranks, obviously a lot of good teams at Prairie View and then Florida A&M. I thought this was a hire that FIU nailed and obviously brought them more success than they have in the past couple seasons. Again, a lot of good skill position players that they had this year. Owens, one of the best running backs in the G5. And I'm excited to see what he can do when he can build some Florida classes, obviously in South Florida and the Miami area. There's a lot of rich talent. So if he can identify some underrated guys that aren't going Power 4 and get them to come to FIU, obviously a guy that a lot of players like to play for, I think once he gets a couple of recruiting classes coming in, FIU is going to be a team to watch for in the Conference USA in the future.
I kind of briefly touched on this football game yesterday, East Carolina and Pitt, a game that I thought was probably the biggest upset of the entire bowl weekend. You talk about what East Carolina lost. You lose your starting quarterback. You lose both coordinators, your star tight end, your star wide receiver. You lose a couple of guys on the defensive side of the ball. Pitt, not too long ago, was a contender for a college football playoff and an ACC championship. East Carolina gets the matchup that they want against a quality opponent, and Blake Harrell and company storms into Annapolis and takes down Pat Narduzzi and the Pitt Panthers. Shout out Anthony Smith. Talk about a team that was able to recover from what they lost. That's an impressive win for what they had. Marlon Gunn had some decent carries. I know he averaged just 3 yards a carry. But, guys, I played against Marlon Gunn in high school, Garrett. Marlon Gunn, to me, is not one of these explosive type of running backs. He can be, but he is a 3 yards and a cloud of dust type of back. He's kind of like what Trent Richardson was in the NFL. He's a third down back that can get you yards. I thought he did fine in that department, but generating big plays is what East Carolina was able to do. You did that with Anthony Smith on the 2 touchdown passes, and you created turnovers. You forced 5 turnovers off of Pitt. Despite your offense going 2 of 15 on third down, putting up only 249 yards of offense, you were able to win the turnover battle, and despite you losing the time of possession, that East Carolina Pirates defense came out and played their ass off.
Yeah, no, big win for them. You know, I mean, they were, 10.5-point underdogs going into this game or something in that ballpark. This was a game that was not supposed to be close. As you said, you have your wide receiver out. Caton Hauser is in the transfer portal. London Montgomery didn't return back from, Christmas break to play in the bowl game. He's not there, so they just have a bunch of backups in on offense. I mean, their defense was obviously what won them the game. They forced a ton of turnovers. But ECU had a couple explosive plays. I mean, Anthony Smith had multiple touchdowns that were very explosive plays. He had over 150 yards of receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. And then ECU even had a long touchdown run that was run off called back because of an inexplicit whistle that the referee blew. So they really should have won this game by more. That was a touchdown that was erased, and then Pitt had a scoop and score touchdown on the next play or 2 plays later. So I mean ECU. I'm not gonna say they controlled this game, but I mean Pitt really couldn't do anything offensively. Very one-dimensional, and I mean ECU was kind of in control of this game for a lot of it, even though the score was close. ECU, other than giving up the touchdown at the end of the first half, I thought they were in control of the game, pretty much all of it.
13 points off of, 16 points off of turnovers is what East Carolina was able to do with the 5 turnovers that they forced. And I thought that was impressive. Despite having a missed field goal, despite fumbling the football, you were able to generate plays and shut down that Pitt offense, which everybody was high on Mason Heitschnell and with what that offense was able to do. Jakarian Tucker, who had a phenomenal freshman year for Pitt. You talk about guys like Justin Holmes that pops off for 100 yards from his tight end position. Raphael Williams, who's one of the best, who ended up being one of the best receivers on that Pitt roster. It wasn't a great game from East Carolina and offensively. I thought Chase Ndita, though, found his number one guy and got him the football. I said this when we did our previews Friday. If for East Carolina to win this football game, they've got to generate big plays and they got to force turnovers. They were able to do both of those things, and that's why they're walking away with a 9-win season and the biggest upset of the bowl season.
Yeah, no, I mean, the turnovers were massive. And Kenny Johnson, another Pitt wide receiver, I don't even think he had a reception in the game. So, I mean, to be able to shut him down completely, he entered the portal today, I saw, or maybe that was yesterday, but he's in the portal. So, I mean, they were able to shut down that Pitt offense that's been explosive at points in the season. And, I mean, as you said, this was a team at the beginning of November that had a real chance to make the college football playoff, make the ACC championship game. Obviously had some losses down the stretch, but this was a game that ECU pretty much no one thought they had any business winning and go out and win the game. And that shows you what G5 teams are capable of. I understand that, obviously the G5 from top to bottom is not the same as the Power Four, but these teams can upset these teams, and especially in bowl season when one team's more hungry than the other. I can guarantee you an ECU win here is more important for them than a Pitt win. So really big season for ECU. Harrell's got them rolling, and a lot quicker than I would have thought they would if you would have told me, what was going to happen midway through last season.
I didn't really know why they hired Blake Harrell. I know you have a great end of the season, but that's a guy that is a player's coach. That was a guy that the Pirates were advocating for, they got, and now they're paying the greatest price, which is back-to-back Military Bowl victories. Obviously, last year's win over NC State, fantastic win, 7.5-point dogs into that one. You get the big win there. This one is even sweeter, knowing the type of depth that you lost, knowing that you lost so much personnel on the staff, and to come out victorious just has to show you that Blake Harrell is going to be one of the best coaches in the American Conference for the next several years to come. North Texas and San Diego State out in New Mexico. I said that this was going to be a game that was going to be controlled by North Texas. I thought that because you had so many guys that were playing in this football game, I thought North Texas offensively was going to overwhelm San Diego State, and they were going to be able to cruise. I didn't expect having San Diego State going blow for blow and putting on their best offensive performance of the year. That I don't think that was on anyone's bingo card at all this year. So I knew what offensively we were going to get from North Texas. I didn't expect for them to put up 618 yards of offense against the number one defense, but I didn't expect for San Diego State's offense, which had been lackluster, to say the least, to be able to put up a performance like they did this past weekend out in New Mexico.
Yeah, this was the best game of the day, probably the best game of bowl season so far. High-scoring game, I think it was 1,100 yards of offense. There's like 50 first downs. The game took 4.5 hours almost. I would do. I mean, I thought this was going to be a blowout, to be honest. San Diego State's been a defensive team all season. Their top two corners were out of the game. You see the entire UNT offense is playing with Hawkins and Mestamaker and Young and Dorner, and you're thinking they're going to score 1,000,000 points. And how's San Diego State going to play, especially with Jaden Denegal out? And then, boom, Bart Emanuel comes in, a guy you haven't heard much about this season, was at Central Michigan, obviously, had some pretty good moments there. Comes to San Diego State and shows off his run game with his legs in the first half. I mean, just put up incredible rushing numbers, broke off 2 massive runs. And then he comes out of the game, and they bring in the third-string quarterback, and he played pretty good. Now, he didn't play good enough, obviously, for them to win the game. You're not going to get in a shootout with your third-string quarterback and score 50 points and be able to beat North Texas. But, San Diego State had a couple plays that were able to keep them in this game. They forced a couple turnovers. They had the punt return touchdown. They kept Mestamaker from having, a great game. I didn't think he played horrible, but, I mean, he had a couple turnovers. It definitely wasn't his best game that he had. But Caleb Hawkins was able to have just enough touchdowns and big runs, and Dorner got involved for North Texas. And if you're a betting man, it was quite a legendary cover at the end for San Diego State as they scored with 1 second left to go. But I'm not too sure why Sean Lewis went for the 2-point conversion there with 4 or 5 minutes left in the game. You go for the 1 point there, and then the touchdown that you score at the end of the game, if you go for 2, you can go to overtime. So kind of a little bit of a questionable coaching decision there that he made, but very impressive with what the Aztecs did, being down 20 points in the fourth quarter.
Here's where I was confused because I thought Sean Hawkins had some really questionable decisions over the weekend for this. Did I say his name right? Or
are you talking about Sean Lewis?
Lewis, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
but,
you got the two
Sean
names
Lewis,
combined, yeah.
I thought Sean Lewis had a lot of questionable decisions over the course of that football game. And we'll get into those later. But like you mentioned, I thought Mestamaker didn't have his best game of the year. But for the run game to get involved a lot more than it had been, it was crazy. Caleb Hawkins was one of the best running backs in all of college football. And how many times were we talking about him throughout the season? In fact, I want to compare him and Jeremiah Love's statistics over the course of this year. I understand that it's not the same, but damn. You talk about two guys that are very similar in stature and strength. Jeremiah Love, 199, 1,300 yards, 18 scores, and averaged almost 7 yards a carry. Okay, not bad. Caleb Hawkins, 230 he carries, 1,434 yards, 25 touchdowns, led all of FBS in rushing touchdowns, averaged 6.2 yards a carry. Why the hell did he not get a Heisman invite? What does he need to do? Does he need to run for over 7 yards a carry and have 2,000 yards rushing? I mean, we're not going to get another group of 5 running back in the Heisman conversation unless he puts up an Ashton Jeanty type performance. But damn, how many running backs do we see even run for over 20 touchdowns this year? Jeremiah Love didn't even do that this year. And to be honest with you, I really wasn't impressed with his performance at all at times this year. I wasn't impressed with what Jeremiah Love did. I was more impressed with what Caleb Hawkins did over the weekend going up against the number 1 defense in all of college football compared to what Jeremiah Love does against cupcake competition in the Power 4. But him and the combination of a guy like Ashton Gray, which unfortunately both of them are in the transfer portal, that's what sucks the most about that, is that you get your top two running backs. Both of them pop off, combined for over almost 350 yards and 4 scores, and they're in the portal. When you talk about guys like Wyatt Young and Landon Sides and Cameron Dorner, 2 guys that are going to end up in the portal. Wyatt Young is going to end up in Stillwater. Cameron Dorner is going to end up in Stillwater. There's a lot. We talked about the mass exodus early on when we previewed our show. This is one of those teams that we're going to talk about. So Mestamaker obviously played his last game over the weekend. If I am Eric Morris and I am Oklahoma State, I am putting together a package that is going to involve all of those dudes. And you mentioned this last week, Garrett. All of them are going to be in Stillwater, and Oklahoma State's going to be one of the more improved teams in college football. And everybody's going to be up in arms and say, oh my gosh, how did this happen? Well, it's just North Texas's roster out in Stillwater.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Hawkins' story is one of the most incredible ones in college football. Two-star athlete in high school, a two-star running back in high school, has D2 offers to Emporia State and some other schools. North Texas's running back coach goes up there and offers him really late, and then really didn't even get involved until really like 4 games into the season. I mean, he played the first 3 games, but he didn't really have any. I mean, they were very pedestrian stats. And then just goes off his last 10 games of the season, has like 17 touchdowns in his last 5 games. Obviously, backfield very good. You can involve him in the passing game. And then, as you said, obviously this receiver core that's probably going to be going to Stillwater with Wyatt Young. Miles Coleman is another guy that I would expect to find a home somewhere. I don't know if I see him going to Oklahoma State, just because I felt like this year he was a really good receiver. And with Dorner and Wyatt Young in the running game, they didn't get him the ball as much as he should have. But in the American Conference game, he popped. So I don't know if he wants to go be a wide receiver 1 somewhere else, because I think he has that potential. Obviously, Dorner is going to be a high-level NFL draft pick in this cycle. He's going to be one of the top wide receivers in this 2026 NFL draft class. I would expect him to be a day 2 pick. And then there's obviously, as you said, a lot of these guys are going to go to Oklahoma State. You're going to say, where did this offense come from? Well, it's North Texas's roster. If Mestamaker goes there, I think all the dominoes to this offense are going to go there. I think it's going to happen, though. I mean, Brophy was obviously the quarterback coach at Oklahoma State. He's the new OC he was the quarterback coach at North Texas, going to be the OC now at Oklahoma State. You have Morris going over there. So if they can bring that package deal of Young, Hawkins, and Mestamaker, they're going to be a scary offense next year in the Big 12.
That's what's going to concern me, is that you're going to have something like that. And now my question is, what happens with North Texas this year? You talk about losing your head coach in Eric Morris. He's gone after this year. And you look at who you're going to have to, or who you're going to have taking over the reins. It's obviously going to be Neil Brown, the former West Virginia head coach. He's a former Sun Belt guy. He's been around the group of 5 before. This is going to be his second time in Texas after being the assistant to the head coach this past year. I don't know really with what to expect, because obviously it's going to be a rebuild out in Denton. I don't know what North Texas is going to bring back to the table. And I say the same thing about other teams around the group of 5. How is this going to affect North Texas down the stretch going into next year? And what do you think expectations would realistically be out in Denton?
Yeah, it's hard to say, obviously, with the coaching change. I mean, you have a guy that's coming in that didn't have the best resume at West Virginia, but he's won games before, obviously, at other stops along the way. So I would expect them to be still competitive. I think with what they did this year, they're going to be able to show guys in the portal, look, we made it to the American Conference Championship game this year. We have the resources in the Fort Worth, Dallas area to be very good here in Denton. And, I mean, this was an offense that, let's be real, I don't think a lot of people even expected them to be that good this year. I thought Reese Poffenbarger was going to win the job over the summer, and then Mestamaker wins it. Obviously, he had a great bowl game last year, but I thought they bring in this high-level guy in Poffenbarger, who is an extremely impressive FCS quarterback at UAlbany, and then went to Miami, and then Cam Ward transferred there, so he didn't play there. But I thought he was going to get footing at North Texas, so that was a surprise. Caleb Hawkins, I mean, this was a guy that pretty much no one in the country had even heard of until a couple weeks into the season. And then their wide receiver room outside of Dorner and Miles Coleman, I wasn't even that familiar with. And then you have a guy like Wyatt Young that pops out of nowhere. So they could have a situation like that again next year where they go out and they get a bunch of under-recruited guys and have a really good offense next year. Or they could have a situation in what happened to Sam Houston State where their entire defense got raided and actually went to North Texas this year. And you saw what happened to Sam Houston State's defense. They didn't recover this season. So I don't think they're going to have an average offense next year. I think they're either going to have a really solid offense like they did this year, or they're just going to kind of have an off year and not really have any footing after losing their entire offensive roster and losing pretty much every skill position player that they had.
Couple more games to talk about before we get into previews for tomorrow. Army and UConn. No Joe Fagnano. He's not with the team, but Cam Edwards and Skylar Bell were involved. Unfortunately, Skylar Bell didn't even touch the field, probably because he was going to dress. That all we heard from all that week was that you were going to have Skylar Bell and Cam Edwards that were going to dress. They never said that they were going to participate. They were just going to dress for the football game. Skylar Bell was the only one that was dressing, played like a coach on the sideline. Cam Edwards goes for 11 for a $108. Doesn't matter because Army's rushing offense goes for 368 against the UConn team that rushing defense-wise, they just haven't been good at all this year, being able to defend that area of the field.
Yeah, unfortunate situation for UConn. A really good team through much of the season. Had a lot of really good wins this year, and then the bowl game is kind of unfortunately what a lot of these modern-day bowl games have become, which is opt-outs. You had your quarterback that, if I was him, I would have played. I mean, Fagnano was a really good quarterback all season, had 20-plus touchdowns before he threw an interception, but at the end of the day, he's not a guy that's going to be drafted. He's still going to be a UDFA unless someone takes a chance on him in a late day 3 pick. I would have gone out there and put more film on tape, but he didn't. Skylar Bell, obviously, I have nothing but good things to say about him on the field. I think if you're going to tell everybody, though, that you're going to play and that you're trying to get other people to play, it's not the best look to play one drive and then call it a day. But I do respect Cam Edwards for playing, even though he's in the transfer portal. So this was just an offense that was a shell of itself. Basically, your 3 playmakers that did most of the heavy carrying for you of Edwards, Fagnano, and Bell were no-shows. Other than Edwards, he played. But Bell and Fagnano didn't do anything, so it was just hard to get your offense going. The defense, though, as you said, I mean, they didn't really do too much either. Army, I mean, they just ran the ball all over them. This game was pretty much over by the start of the 4th quarter.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a performance. God's power, however you say this cat's last name. Freshman quarterback, didn't play a whole lot in the regular season, and comes into the bowl game and pops off for 12 carries and a $171. Cale Helms, hell of a game, has some big throws and runs for a pair of scores, has 3 total touchdowns on the game. But there was no other or better player on that field than God's power.
Yeah, really impressive for him. A guy, obviously, most of the country not extremely familiar with. Cade Helms has had, control of that offense pretty much all year. You saw them get involved a little bit in the passing game, which is something that you don't see from a service academy very often. But Army, I mean, they're a team, obviously a very good team last season with Bryson Daly and losing, a couple of those pieces from last season. This was a complete rebuild, but after losing week 1 to Tarleton State, an FCS opponent, to bounce back and finish your season 7-6 and beat a very good UConn team, that gives you, a lot of, motion and experience going into next season. And I'm excited to see what Army does next year, especially with this Army-Navy rivalry that seems like it's as good as ever right now. Really excited to see what Army can bring to the table in the American next year.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I mean, you talk about an Army team that this year was just several minutes away from looking like another 8 or 9 win team. You can't finish the game against Navy. You have that upset, obviously, at the beginning of the year where you played really bad. You go to overtime with North Texas and you're unable to finish the football game. You play Tulane very, very tough. Tulane has to come back down going into the 4th quarter, and you have to win that football game. I think the one that hurt the most, though, was that Tulsa game. I mean, you had that game won, too. where they drive the length of the field in 9 plays in 52 yards, and they get a game-winning field goal, and they knock you off your pedestal. Army's the cup. You have 4 one-possession games that could have gone your way, where you're literally, I think in about every single one of those games, you're leading in the fourth quarter. You just weren't able to finish. Tonight, you finally were able to finish, and you got yourself another bowl victory. Hell of a job by Jeff Monken and that offense being able to put together consistent drives and really shut football right down a struggling UConn defense. Hats off to what Jim Mora Jr. was able to do, hitting the portal right and rebuilding that UConn program from a team that was pretty much in the basement of college football and brought them back to on the doorstep of a 10-win season. All right. Last recap of the night. Obviously, the one from earlier this afternoon. A little Sun Belt rematch. Georgia Southern and Appalachian State into the game. Appalachian State was pretty much exercised. Lost majority of that roster to the portal. I think people are already tired of Dowell Loggins after 1 year. You're glad to be there. And then for what they lost, though, I will give a lot of respect to App State that you were able to put together that type of performance. I know your offense really wasn't that great. You have a quarterback that comes off the bench that was on the scout team, like we mentioned off air. Garrett, just what did you see in this football game that kind of caught your eye? And, just talk to me about what this game looked like just as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, credit to App State for playing. 5-7 team, lost to this Georgia Southern team earlier in the season. Obviously, a lot of teams decided to decline the invitation. App State decided that they would take it. So give them credit. Obviously, when you do that, you have a lot of guys that have already left the program. Obviously, your QB1, A.J. Swan, was gone. Cole, your QB2, was gone. So you turn to a freshman as your QB3, and then a guy off your scout team that was playing defensive back to be your quarterback through much of the game as well. I thought he had a lot of good plays, though, on the ground. He used his legs pretty well. Just too many interceptions in this game. They had 3 or 4 turnovers. They had a situation where they got in the red zone earlier in the game. Kicker made the field goal, but they were offsides, had to move it back 5 yards. Then he missed the field goal, but it was they called the play dead before the field goal was missed. So then a 36-yard field goal turned into a 46-yard field goal. Missed that. So then, you lose points there. It was kind of just the fact that, their roster was cut down, and Georgia Southern had all their guys playing. O.J. Arnold played, J.C. French played, all their receiving corps played, Dallin Cobb. So, everyone there for Georgia Southern was able to play. App State was going to have to play a perfect game to be able to win this game, really just to cover the 10.5-point spread. They were going to have to play a pretty solid game. And if they wouldn't have turned the ball over, they really would have had a chance. But with turnovers, Georgia Southern was able to take control of this game. I think that's a welcoming sight for Southern fans, though. Even though this was an App State offense that was a shell of itself, Dalton Stroman was really the only notable guy that played on the offensive side of the ball, that played, a lot of snaps this season and was a big skill position player for them. But Georgia Southern's defense, much of the season, very subpar. So to be able to create turnovers and have a good ending to your season, at least gives you a little bit of hope coming into the offseason, because this was a Georgia Southern team that I think a lot of people obviously know did not meet expectations for what people thought they would be coming into the season.
I really don't know what to think of Dowell Loggins after his first year at Appalachian State. I honestly didn't like the hire. I thought that you could have gotten a lot better for a lot less. Look, and Dowell Loggins, to his credit, was able to have a great second half for Lenore Sellers, and which pretty much got him the head coaching job at Appalachian State. But I think App State kind of got lazy with their head coaching search. And I think they'll have to pay for it in the next couple of years if they don't turn it around. If they don't hit the portal with the vengeance, if they're not able to hit high school recruiting and kind of compete in the Carolinas and convince people to come to Boone and compete for Sun Belt championships, which you were doing not too long ago. That's what's going to be the downfall of a guy like that. And that it kind of concerns me a little bit. But like you mentioned, heck of a season for Southern fans. I know it was not necessarily the season you had been hoping for, but obviously this was a massive year for Clay Helton and company. Obviously, having lost 3 straight bowl games, pressure's obviously on them, and you finally get a bowl win, even though it's against a Sun Belt team, which you probably beat by 20 or by a pretty decent amount in the regular season. So,
yeah, App State's got to find some juice because they're a program that's a proud G5 program. Obviously, tons of FCS success, and then when they moved up, a little while ago, in the mid 2000s and early 2010s, and even into the 2020s, App State was a program that was consistently one of the top G5 teams. Obviously, last year was difficult with the hurricane and everything that happened in Boone, losing Aguilar to the portal, but they just feel like a team that's lost a lot of juice. Next year is going to be a pivotal season for them because I'm kind of with you. I thought the hire was a little bit shaky. Obviously, they decided they wanted to get someone that had been in the Carolinas, but I think that next year is going to be pivotal. If they have another losing season next year and have 3 subpar seasons in a row, Boone's going to be – people are going to definitely start raising some questions, and donors and people in the university are going to demand changes again.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens at the end of this year. Let's go into our previews as we wrap up the show. Louisiana taking on Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina has their roster. Ryan Beard finally putting together. Who do you have? Brought in Nick Petrino. Brought in a brand new defensive coordinator. Lot to look forward to. I'm not really sure what to think of the hire, but I will say, I thought you were able when you were able to grab a guy like Nick Petrino. I really like him, obviously, with what his dad's legacy has been, being able to create players and create dynamic type of athletes out of nothing. You take a team in Missouri State in their first year in college foot in the FBS level, and you lead them to a bowl game. You win 7 games in the season, and you have a winning record in the CUSA, which I know that it's the CUSA, which is included 5 or 6 teams from the FCS to the FBS, but it doesn't matter. It's still a group of 5 conference that you got quality wins in. You beat a team like New Mexico State on the road. You were able to beat Liberty, and you were able to beat an FIU team that went bowling this year. You kept it close with Kennesaw State. So I think a win is a win no matter what it looks like at the end of the day for a team like Coastal Carolina. Louisiana Tech, that was a team that was about to fire Sonny Cumbie if it wasn't for Marshall. If Marshall doesn't end up backing out of the bowl game, Sonny Cumbie is fired at the end of 2024. But because of that, they survive another year, and what happens the very next season? They find a way to get to a bowl game, and they find a way to get to a winning record in CUSA play. I thought offensively, you looked a lot better. I thought you finally found your playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. And I thought you did a really damn good job of doing so. Even though you've gone through 3 different quarterbacks this year. Trey Kukuk has done a really good job, the Saddleback College transfer. When he's healthy, he's a very agile and mobile quarterback, and I think that's what you're going to see primarily him be used on. But I thought that this was a much improved offense from head to toe compared to last year. Your rushing game has been unstoppable, and I think you put it on full display. What are you expecting from tomorrow in this football game?
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of an interesting one. Obviously, with Beck, be fired at the end of the regular season, bringing in Beard. That's a hire that I liked. I thought he did a really good season at Missouri State in their first season in the FBS. I think he's a guy that's a rising head coach, a younger guy. So excited to see what he can do in Conway. But it'll be a bit of an interesting game. Obviously, can't coach the bowl game yet. And then, as you said, Sonny Cumbie was the guy that was definitely on the hot seat at the beginning of the season. The past 2 seasons, the first year had a really good defense, didn't have an offense, and then last year had an offense, didn't have a defense. This year they've kind of meshed things together a little bit. And as you said, the rushing game's been really good this season. You've had a couple different quarterbacks that have played a lot of different snaps this year. And as you said, one of their top quarterbacks coming from the JUCO ranks. So that just shows you the talent that he was able to find in the transfer portal last season. But it should be an interesting game. Obviously, probably won't be the highest bowl game on most people's bowl card, but should be a good game on a mid-afternoon on a Tuesday afternoon. So it'll be interesting to see who can win, because both of these teams I think need a bowl win. Coastal Carolina to set the standard for their new coaching staff, and then Louisiana Tech to finally get a bowl victory after what's been a little bit of a tough tenure for Sonny Cumbie over the past couple seasons.
People were ready to get rid of him. I talked to a lot of guys that were out in Ruston. A lot of analysts there that said, "Hey, man, it's going to come and it's going to come very soon." But Louisiana Tech 9.5-point favorites going into this one. Look, this run game has been incredible. You've got to be able to establish yourself in the line of scrimmage, something that Coastal has struggled with at times. But you're down with guys like Jacob Fields and Michael Richard, arguably one. But you still have one of the best defenders in all of college football, and Jakari Foster with 7 interceptions this year. He's been a lockdown senior DB, done a really good job of being able to find the football and really be an instinctive type of DB. A guy that I would have really liked to see get a lot more playing time at the Division I level, but obviously having to settle for the JUCO route. I'm really intrigued to see if this could be Eli Finley's last game. One of the best tight ends. He would be one of the best tight ends in the portal if he decides to enter him. Was a John Mackey Award watch list at the beginning of the season, 40 yards. Receiving this year, was a second-team all-conference this year. Do you see a guy like Finley potentially entering the portal? Does he stay at Louisiana Tech? Who's going to establish themselves first on the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, we'll have to see about Finley. Obviously, a really good tight end. Even people that don't follow La Tech football obviously know he's one of the better tight ends in the G5. So I guess you can't really take too much into account until after the bowl game. You see a lot of these guys announce their intentions of what they want to do once the game's over. So maybe we'll see that. But I would love for him to stay and set the standard in Ruston on the offensive side, because he's really been a force over the past couple seasons. But yeah, I think this is a game that La Tech is probably going to be able to control the line of scrimmage. You've seen Coastal Carolina multiple times throughout the season kind of get bullied up front. Obviously, at the beginning of the season when Coastal was playing really bad, it happened. And then obviously when they played better teams like JMU and got run out of the stadium, line of scrimmage was also a bit of an issue. So I see Louisiana Tech probably controlling the line of scrimmage for tomorrow's game.
It's going to be interesting for sure whenever we see a game like that. I am very interested to see what Coastal looks like offensively and what can they do to establish themselves on the line of scrimmage. So if they're able to do that, we'll see what happens. Louisiana Tech, number one thing I'm concerned about is what can they do from a special team standpoint. This has not been a very good kicking team, but I think when it's all said and done, I think Louisiana Tech is able to own the line of scrimmage from start to finish. I don't think Coastal has the depth. You're losing some guys already. The portal, I don't know what you're going to get offensively. Cook and Burnett is going to run rampant. Take Louisiana Tech to call in this football game. But I do – it's a 51.5-point spread. Louisiana Tech has hit the under in a lot of football games this year. I might see this one hitting the under at 51.5. Did you get that last part, Garrett?
The under? Yeah. No, I could definitely see that happening. La Tech, obviously, like you said, 10.5 point favorite. I think it's a similar game to what you saw in this Georgia Southern App State game. I think La Tech's probably going to run pretty rampant at the start. Offensive line is going to control the line of scrimmage. I see La Tech winning this by double digits.
Jacob, what do you think?
Look, the one thing that holds me from picking La Tech is that the Sonny Cumby stuff, and I don't want to talk about it too much, but just like the I don't know. I really like Coastal here. I think Coastal's making something. I know that they kind of sucked at the start of the year, but I do think the under's a good call, I will say. But if I had to pick one, what's like what's the spread we're getting?
Louisiana Tech is 9.5 point favorite in this one.
Give me the Coastal points plus the points. I think I'm solid on the points. I will say I don't think Coastal's that far from being a great team, but sometimes they are very close to being the worst team that you've ever seen.
Right.
Um, but yeah, but I will say I do think that the program as a whole is going in the right direction though. Like overall, it might not be, and I understand that like Coastal under Jamie Chadwell was a Sun Belt contender and everything, but um, I think that they're making more formidable ground, I should say.
Dude, what a down year. Speaking of Jamie Chadwell at Liberty, bro. I mean, you talk about a team that 2 years ago you're 13-1. You lose a lot of depth to the portal. You lose. Who was the quarterback that's at Colorado now?
Salter.
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Salter.
You lose him. You lose. Oh, man. Who's that receiver now? He's at Miami. He was at LSU last year.
Oh, I forget. Yeah, I know you're talking about, but I just.
Do you know who I'm talking about, Garrett?
LSU and vaguely.
But you lose your top quarterback, you lose your top receiver.
CJ Daniels.
CJ Daniels, that's it.
Yeah.
You
Was
lose
he
a
at
lot
Liberty?
of,
I don't even remember that. I mean, I
yeah,
guess
he was.
CJ was a 1,000-yard receiver at Liberty, and I think he went there for 1 year and then dipped after that 23 season.
Okay.
So I don't know what to really expect next year from Jamie Chadwell. I don't think his seat is high, but I think that you have to go bowling. If you miss out on a bowl game again, then the heat is starting to really go down on you at the end of the day.
I mean, they just had no juice on offense this season was the thing. Like, their defense, I thought was decent enough, but there was just like games where they were just completely shut down. And then they just played to their competition. Like the New Mexico State game, they played horrible. Like, that's the game you should be winning by double digits. It's just not the same team that you saw a couple of years ago when they played in a New Year's Six bowl against Oregon. They got to get figured out because, like you said, I mean, they're kind of on a downward spiral right now. This isn't the Liberty that you saw a handful of years ago.
And I said that he needed to be on the hot seat after this year.
Yeah.
And you kind of countered a little bit and say, well, this is one of the first years that they kind of had a bad year. I think if you don't make the changes that you need to offensively, it's going to be a lot of pissed off Liberty fans. Go ask what happens at South Carolina or at LSU and see how their fan base reacts. Go see what Liberty says. Go ahead, Jacob. My bad.
You're good. I will say my one point on Jamie Chadwell as a coach is that there's almost this like snake oil to him, right? If he had stayed at Liberty, I don't think Liberty was any, or not at Liberty. If he had stayed at Coastal, I don't think Coastal's any different than they are now, right? And with that, like I know I'm pretty much a Jamie Chadwell hater at this point, right? Just like the way that he takes losses and stuff, and he's blamed stuff on stuff that isn't himself, and he has taken blame for himself this year, I will say. So props to him for that. But I'm not a Jamie Chadwell, and he even had Vasco this year, and like I know in the little Sun Belt group chat we had, the Coastal Please Win guy was huge that Vasco was back under Chadwell, but it just didn't go. And I mean, I know Salter sucks to lose, but going into the season, everybody was like, "Oh, Vasco's going to be even better than Salter." So I don't know. Definitely, he's not on the hot seat, but he's on like the lukewarm seat. He's in the interview room, like, but yeah. But I would honestly see him trying to jump ship, i.e., like a Ryan Silverfield, which I don't say he was on the hot seat. He had a great season this year. But I think Ryan Silverfield saw the writing on the wall if he had a bad year at Memphis, because he had been up and down at Memphis before going to Arkansas. So if there's a lower tier Power 4 job or something like that that Chadwell can jump in on, I think this is his last year at Liberty no matter what.
Didn't they lose 3 straight to end the year? Memphis did.
Yes, I believe.
Yeah, and I think Silverfield, in my opinion, is a little bit of an overrated coach. I don't think he's an SEC football coach, in my opinion. I don't see it. Every season they're supposed to be an American title contender, and they never do it.
Yes.
They always lose to a team they're not supposed to lose to. I don't know. I think he's a solid coach, but I think his American Conference record is not as good as it should be. Now, he'll win the game a year where they beat an SEC team. They beat Arkansas this year. They beat Florida State out of the ACC last year, but they just don't play good enough in conference play, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to add on to your point, Garrett, I think his biggest issue especially this year, there's always one position group, well, not necessarily the same one, but one position group every year that like struggles and they're like, this is why we lost. This is why, like, when they beat Tulane last year, he had a NFL running back, and that's pretty much the reason that they were as good as they were, right? This year comes around, you lose the NFL running back, and then you don't have a single quarterback that's like, any producing. And that UAB game told me all I needed to know about where that program was really heading, because I don't think Memphis was ever going to be under Ryan Silverfield. I don't think Memphis was ever going to be a top tier, even American program. Because like if you can't just take care of the little things, like that's a rivalry game, right? It's not like like last year when Kennesaw beat Liberty, right? It's not like we're
Right.
playing little UAB. No, that's a rivalry game. Like people care about that game still, and I'm like, dude, like you have to win those games. So and I understand that Arkansas fans are like, oh well, he beat us, so I mean that means something good, right? But then you gotta look in the mirror there. But yeah, that's my thought on Silverfield. So.
Skylar Hartwig that sends out thoughts on Cam Coleman entering the portal. He may end up at Bama. I have a really because Bama was his second option coming out of high school.
Yeah. The only issue with the Bama and Ohio State of the world, they only use money to keep players in, not like or like to keep players from leaving, not bring players in.
No.
I mean, who was the last big time player that they tried to bring in from the portal?
I
That
mean, you're right. That's why I said no. Sorry,
yeah.
I had a brain fart.
A&M, Oregon, Florida is what all I heard throughout the day, in any order really. That it all makes sense, right? I think A&M, you're losing your top 2 receivers or 2 of your top 3 receivers. Florida, you're not well. You've had a few hit the portal, but you definitely need a bigger guy. And then Oregon has FU money, right? For lack of a better term. I think they're just trying to play ball with anybody. Uh, through talking today, I re-upped a beat that I heard last year that Carnell Tate was offered like 1.2 million by Oregon, and Ohio State shot that down with another offer of whatever. So yeah, I think we'll hear Ohio State, we'll hear Alabama. I don't think they're real contenders if the other 3 that I mentioned are still playing. So
I
Garrett, you
mean,
got anything on that?
it depends on how much money is being offered, and it depends on where he's going to be on the roster.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to go somewhere, I feel like, where he wants to be wide receiver 1. Which, like, if you go to A&M, you're going to be wide receiver. Like, he's obviously a wide receiver 1 talent at,
Yeah.
pretty much any team in the country outside of Ohio State, because they have Jeremiah Smith, maybe a couple others. But I think A&M makes the most sense. Like, that was where he was originally committed in high school. Like you said, they're going to lose, 2 of their top targets this season to the draft with Craver and Concepcion. But, I can see him going to Alabama. Alabama's gone out and got Horton and Bernard out of the portal. So what's stopping them from going out and getting Coleman, especially with the regression of Williams that you've seen this season? Obviously, he's not a wide receiver 1 talent going into next year. But then you have Latsir Brooks, who I think is going to be really good. So I don't know. That's an interesting wide receiver room there.
So Craver is back next year. Casey Concepcion is gone. I think it would make more sense if Coleman goes over there. But I get what you're meaning about him wanting to be a wide receiver 1. But think about what he was this year with him and Malcolm Simmons, and look at what they were able to do this year. But that to me makes the most sense, like you mentioned already. But I want to
forgot.
shift back to a conversation that you guys were having about Jamie Chadwell. To me, and then Ryan Silverfield. To me, right now, and this might come back to bite me in the ass. The most overrated coach right now in college football is Charlie Huff. And I get it with all the turnarounds that he has this year. I get that. He's done a damn good job at doing that. But what have we seen in the years that he's been a head coach? Look, he was impressive at Marshall. He brought Marshall back to being a contender in the CUSA and then the Sun Belt Conference. And you brought them back into that type of relevancy. And you go back 1 year to a 1-11 Southern Miss team, and you lead them in contention for a Sun Belt title. But they had a collapse at the end of the year. Part of that has to do with Reese. Another part of that has to do with offensive production, because offense was abysmal the last the last 4 games of the season. And mentioned that in the press conference in the New Orleans Bowl.
Yeah.
And to say I don't was kind of hard to do because I watched the game. I saw it in person. I saw how bad the offense looked. And I know that they mentioned about leaving it better than we left it. Guys, the problem is that when a guy like Charlie Huff comes in, he never really sticks around, does he? He's always looking to jump ship to the next best thing, which I get it because it's a business at the end of the day, coaching is. But my gosh, it's not like he's leading national championship type level production.
Yeah.
And for a team like Memphis coming off of a guy that won an American Conference title, and I know that he was going to be at some point, people were going to start looking at, hey, man, we're tired of these 8-5, 9-4 seasons, and we're not putting together decent seasons. We're supposed to be contenders in the American. But you go out with a guy like Charlie Huff. Part of me wants to believe in him. Another part of me is just show me the results. So I don't know, man. I really don't know what I have to think about Charlie Huff. But right now, I just don't have a good feeling about how good he can really be until he gets to a decent conference. And I think the American is going to really show us if he's legit or not.
I think what's too about him, like I think he's a good coach. Like I probably like him more than you do, obviously. The thing that's going to be tough for him at Memphis is the transition from Marshall to Southern Miss was much easier because he brought basically his entire roster. Like
it was in the same conference too.
Right, and he brought over 50 transfer portal guys basically. You bring in Braxton at quarterback. That was your quarterback at Marshall. Josh Motton is one of the top corners in the country. He was at Marshall. You bring him to Southern Miss. Like a lot of these guys are either out of eligibility now or they're going to go to the pro ranks. So now at Memphis, you're going to have to kind of build your own roster again, which obviously he's done that before, but it's been a couple seasons since he's done that. A lot of these skill position guys that he had at Southern Miss this year and defensive leaders he had at Marshall. Like, it was almost the same team. They just switched logos. So, where he has to recruit these guys now and bring guys in through the transfer portal that he hasn't already had relationships with, I think that's what's going to be interesting when he takes, the job here at Memphis.
Yeah, and I'll just say it's a weird combo of schools as well. I think that at Memphis you have such a higher expectation than what a normal Memphis coach has probably come into with, like even Silverfield when he first came in there. And I think with all that, you're going to have to win now. And I know that sounds dumb and maybe not win now in year 1, but by year 2, if you don't win anything in year 1, you're going to have to win more in year 2, right? And I think, it's just such a rough spot. I know I was talking to one of my friends that's a UAB guy about this, and that UAB Memphis game is going to be huge for where are they at as a program. Also hold on, let me pull up the 2026 schedule. There was another one that I just popped. It's literally one of my recent searches. It just popped out as hey, they need to win. Tulane and at USF and then at Boise State, right? So this is a hell schedule, and I don't know what their totals are going to be, right? The Vegas total. But there's a couple games in there where, you pick 4 games. If you win 2 of those, it's a good season. 3 of those, it's a great season. But if you come out with none, questions are being asked. Like it'll be tough and it'll be unfair for a first year coach, but I think that's just the position that Charles Huff and Memphis have put themselves in.
And he's gonna have to go get a quarterback because
Yeah, that
obviously
too.
Lewis is out of eligibility, and then AJ Hill hits the portal. I mean, he was a 4-star in high school. They got him with the FedEx money. I mean, he had SEC offers. And then, I mean, obviously Arlington Maiden was kind of their QB2 that they had, when Lewis was out this season. But, I mean, I don't know that you can completely put a trust in him that he's QB1. Like, I think you at least have to have some type of open competition with somebody that you bring in through the portal, especially when you lose, Cortez Brain. I mean, he was one of your top targets. Yeah. I mean, he's going to the draft. So, like, when you're going to kind of have to rebuild this entire offense.
It's crazy.
I was kind of disappointed that AJ Hill didn't stick around after his freshman year. I mean, you talk about, I had him as a top 10 freshman going into this year, and I thought he had a lot of potential as at the P4 level and thought he could do some really good things at that level. I had opportunities to learn under Brendan Lewis. I thought he had an opportunity to kind of compete with him for the starting job at the preseason. Obviously, Brendan Lewis took advantage of that, but AJ Hill, I thought, learned a lot from him. And it sucks that he's entering the portal. I don't know who is going to get a guy. Initially was committed to Colorado at the start of his commitment, or at the start of his really where it began, the commitment dates in his junior and senior year. I would expect for him to go to Colorado, but then again, are teams like that going to look for somebody like him? That's the biggest thing that I want to say.
They get Juju too.
Who?
They got Juju at Colorado.
That's
like
right.
He's going to be QB1.
Is Juju a redshirt freshman this year?
No, he was a true freshman this season.
Oh my! Oh shit! I thought he was a true freshman last year. Okay.
No. Yeah.
By the way, shout out.
I think he lost the job because of that UAB game. I think the coaching staff told him he's going to have to play better because the UAB game was obviously the worst loss for Memphis, and he started the game and had less than 200 passing yards. Like, that was the game that screwed him over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
I mean, shout out Squilla, by the way. Is that how you say his last name, Jacob?
Who? Oh, Skilla? Yeah.
Skilla. So Skilla, I don't know.
Shula.
Shula's still in. Oh, Shula. If you're still in the chat, man, what do you think of Tyler Dolsky entering the former Minnesota linebacker? Dude, talk about a freaking linebacker. Guys, I saw this hit on Twitter earlier today. It was either, he reminded me of the Georgia Tech linebacker. You know, the type of guy that had that little cowboy collar. That's who this cat reminded me of. Dude is a downhill freak. We used to call him downhill daddies. That is the definition of one. Okay, let me explain. That's what we called our linebacking group. Okay?
Indeed.
I swear to God, I'm not being facetious here. This is what we called our linebacking cores. We always broke it off on downhill daddies on 1-1, downhill daddies. I promise we didn't say it like that at the end. But
good Lord,
he's one of those types of guys that's gonna meet you in the A gap and smoke you. He is a really, really damn good linebacker, and I thought he could really improve in that department. Okay. Yeah, well, I understand FAU is one of the worst defenses in the country. Obviously, he says no one's irreplaceable. Hard hitter in the run game, but very slow. That's what I kind of thought, because knowing what FAU did last year, knowing that offensively you had to get yourself into shootouts to make up for what the defense put on your plate, there's a lot that you're going to have to replace in that department and basically clean house defensively. So, I mean, I still like the guy. I think Stolsky is going to find himself back at another P4, but I don't know if he'll play, though. That's my thing.
Yeah. Also, I think that there's a bunch of kids entering the portal that aren't necessarily locked into being in the portal. It's this year. and I didn't say this last year. Someone was like, you probably said this last year too. No, but this year, well, you will hear more guys that are like, hey, I'm entering the portal, and then all of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, I'm back or whatever. I know like several of the Delaware guys have done that, and I understand Delaware's a lower school, but I'm sure some of these guys at Auburn and stuff, like, dude, Auburn has like 45 transfers. There is absolutely no way not a single one of them ends up coming back, right? And some of the other Power Four schools can say the same. Plus, like, we still have like what is it? I think it was 26 teams remaining in the postseason play. Um, Zach Kitley. Yeah, they need a new IPF like bad. Jesus.
What the hell is that? Oh, indoor practice facility. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, what are the odds Coleman decides he's going to kill? Because I feel like that's a possibility, especially with Malcolm Simmons hitting the portal. Like,
Yeah.
what if they just throw a bag to Coleman and say, come
I would
back?
say in their positions, it is a higher possibility that Simmons comes back versus Coleman.
Sure.
I know that like I guarantee the idea with Simmons was, hey buddy, you just had 160 yards against one of the best defenses in America. I'm sure we could get somebody to get money. But like if he comes back and he's like, hey, like, um, he tells his agent, hey, like all we could get is some random lower P4 offering us like, what is this?
You mentioned Delaware. I
Beautiful.
had to bring this up. What y'all know about Nick Minicucci, dude?
Dude, I love Nick Minicucci.
And he's one of the people that's decided that he's coming back to Delaware.
That's
Yeah.
what I heard.
Sean
Yeah.
Brown also came back. And okay, Sean Brown, for the non-ball knowers of CUSA football, Sean Brown could probably play for your favorite school at wide receiver, right? But he decides to come back and he's going to be like I think he's going to be a true sophomore actually, or a true possibly redshirt sophomore. I don't know. But he's a dog at receiver and he decides to come back and it's one of the coolest stories, the whole for the 307 or 207, I think. And I think Delaware could really be nasty in Conference USA. There's a bunch of first-year schools in Conference USA. Like, well, I understand Beard's gone to Coastal now, and that's part of my thing with Coastal being the right direction. Maybe not for this game, but later on. Anyways, but Delaware is going to be a solid school going forward. Jacksonville State's going to be a dog going forward. Kennesaw, no matter who their coach ends up being, it's going to be a dog moving forward. Um, and then a bunch of a bunch of the other schools are gonna be really good. The only school that I have issues with their football programs as a total, or not only school, only conference, the American. The American, I have questions. Do I have like alfalfa? Hold up.
Brother, your hair has been jacked up since we first met, brother. You had a cowlick here and there.
I'm sorry, brother. You're
It's
good.
okay. I forgive you. Shula says, honestly, surprised Delaware's coach didn't get more looks. Hell of a job by him this year. Yeah, I really like Ryan Canny. I enjoyed talking to him in the press conference after the bowl game. And, he talked about Nick's progression. Nick didn't start off the year as the starter. He
Yep.
was the guy that backed up at the beginning of the year. You lose your starting quarterback to injury, and they were the number one passing offense in all of college football. That was one
Yeah.
of the best things that we saw all year.
He didn't officially join the roster until like summer 3 either, right?
Right.
Yeah. Or
Summer of
something.
23?
No. I'm saying like, as in, I don't think he was on the roster in the spring.
Oh,
Something along those lines. Hold up, let me look it
okay.
up. There was a story on this before the bowl game.
I mean, I
Okay.
think they have definitely more stability than Missouri State. Like, of the two FBS teams, like Delaware is definitely moving. Although, I mean, I thought the hire that they had for Missouri State was pretty good, getting SMU's OC. Obviously, sucks to lose Beard, but I mean, I felt like they probably could have gone in a couple different places with that hire, and the way that they landed, I thought was solid enough.
I think Missouri State made a better hire than like 20 schools that had way more of a budget than they do. So
Yeah,
I,
props
no,
to
I
them for
thought
that.
Casey Woods was a good hire.
I
Yeah, I
thought you
think
were going to keep Nick Petrino and elevate him to head coach, man. I didn't expect Casey Woods to kind of come out and emerge as the guy for um Missouri State. I didn't think it was likely. And I'll be honest, man, that's a hell of a get for Missouri State to get somebody that has been leaning one of the best offenses and learning under one of the best offensive play callers in college football. Now,
Yeah.
is it based off? Is he getting the job based off of what Rhett Lashley has done? Because I think Rhett Lashley is still the primary play caller. I think Casey Woods has been kind of more that quarterback's coach. I'm sure that he's had a little bit of a hand in play calling, but I think it's Lashley at the end of the day that's still making the right calls. But gentlemen, really fast, if you guys have any final thoughts, I've got to get going to sleep pretty soon. I got to be in New Orleans early in the morning. So we'll wrap up the show with this. The mass exodus, like we kind of mentioned a little bit about this, Garrett, is plaguing. All 11 starters for JMU are gone. Majority of North Texas' starters are gone. You know, what is the future going to look like for the G5, knowing that this is very likely the future of what you're going to see right now with NIL rampant? And does it pretty much kind of eliminate the G5 or being a consistent contender? Are we going to have these rotational type of teams just filing in to the college football playoff? Because I thought, look, I'm going to put this out there too. We're going to just have one group of 5 in the college football playoff. I think this was a good year for the group of 5 to prove themselves to get that they deserve to. And I think they did. But I think just the results of this past weekend, JMU fought their ass off, but Tulane, kind of laid a brick.
Yeah, there's no perfect solution to it, obviously. In the world that we're in, these guys ball out in the G5, and then they're going to want to go get their money in the Power 4, which, I can't blame them for that. But at the same time, I feel like you can develop it at a G5 school. You saw Cam Cook. He was decent at TCU. He was a solid back at TCU, battled some injuries, and then develops into, one of the better running backs in the country, statistically the best running back in the country at Jack State. So I think you can develop it at G5 schools fine. I think you still have to have a path for a group of 5 team, obviously, to be in the college football playoff. You need one every year. If the G5 can't be in the college football playoff, then what's the point of them being in the FBS is the way I look at it, because those teams should have something to play for just as every other FBS team does. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I understand football is not the same as basketball, but the way that we do postseason and NCAA sports is the winners of conferences in any other sport, basketball, baseball, they get in the postseason. Now, the postseason in football is not big enough, but the winner of the G5, the best G5 team, should get in. And are they ever going to win the national title? No. But there's only probably 3 or 4 teams each year that can win the national title anyways. SMU got blown out in the playoff last year. Tennessee got blown out in the playoff last year. But then when JMU and Tulane, have games that are, they lose this year, it's a problem that they lose, but it was no problem that SMU got run off the field by Penn State. Like, that doesn't make sense. So, I don't know. There's not a perfect solution to what we can do. This is just the way it is for G5s now. It kind of sucks. It sucks a lot, actually, but that's just kind of the world that we live in NIL right now. But I still think you can build a roster and get hot at the right time and win a playoff game. I think it's possible.
Gentlemen, let me divide this into 2 separate topics. First off, I hate this isn't basketball thing, right? And then you'll have the same people remembering UMBC versus Virginia when we were like college age people were 12, right? So let me read off the last 10 March Madness and college baseball World Series people.
Come on now,
Florida,
don't pull a Joel Klatt.
Well, it's not a Joel Klatt, but Florida, Connecticut, Kansas, Baylor, Virginia, Villanova, North Carolina, Villanova, Duke, Connecticut, Louisville, right? And I think I did 11, whatever. But in the last decade, there really hasn't been the closest thing to a G5 winner we've had is that Villanova run, and like the Big East is not they were in the Big East, right? I think, whatever.
Yes.
But they're not a real G5 team, right? And we really haven't had a Cinderella run win it all since I'm still scrolling. Wow. my baseball or basketball history is not good as my baseball history.
You got to go back to
It's
Oh,
really
really?
NC State back in like the 80s. I mean, the last
Yeah,
time you
NC
saw.
State in the 80s, or
would this
even before
count?
that, Texas Western in 1966 might have been your like
I mean,
real
what Drew's saying. I mean,
Cinderella.
you have FAU in the Final Four. I mean, St. Peter's made it to what
Yeah,
the Elite Eight Final Four.
but like how
Jacob, are you
often is
talking
it
about them winning it all or just making the
winning it
Final
all?
Four? Okay.
Winning it all, because like that's the one thing that you'll hear from certain people be like, "Oh, well they'll never win it all." I'm like, I just saw Texas A&M get their ass kicked by Reuben Bain and company in the offensive line. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, we
Anyways,
got another video
but
coming out about how much of frauds they were this year.
well, the funniest thing is, it's like okay, we were just talking about how Tulane got their ass kicked. Okay, cool. But if you go throughout the whole, like they would have been more deserved of that one spot than JMU was by a country mile, and JMU performed better at the end. Like you can't predict it. Anyways, baseball, real quick. LSU, Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Oregon State, Florida, Coastal Carolina in 2016, and Virginia. Coastal Carolina, obviously, your one G5, and it happens more often in baseball. Fresno State won it a couple years back. Before that, Cal State Fullerton, who are now considered a more predominant player after they've won a couple. But Pepperdine also in there, Wichita State. But yeah, but it's like if you don't want it to be basketball or baseball, fine. But realize that even making it that doesn't mean that your precious little Power Four school doesn't win. Now let me go back on to the rotational aspect of it all. It's head coach based more than anything. These boys are playing for the head coach, right? It's no longer a program. You're not learning. I had a huge post about how like the difference in how these boys it was in reaction to somebody. It was like Icyvert talking about why do coaches get fired so quickly? And I'm like, because they're having to win like 27 games over 3 years, or they're gonna get fired, right? Or 25 games over 3 years, gonna get fired. And I'm like, so in that period, you can't recruit through high school, right? You have to go through the portal. You can't develop a program unless if you're in like year 8, 9, 10. And then like on top of all this, Iowa State is going to have like 11 returning players next year, not just returning starters, players. And they have one returning starter. I don't even know who it is. I just saw the graphic. Um, and it's like, it's not just happening at the G5, it's happening everywhere. The very top schools are not necessarily benefiting from it because, as we've said, like, even with the Auburns of the world or whatever who have a ton of money, they're still losing their top guys no matter what. I guarantee Alabama gets out of the playoff, like Adonai Mitchell or whatever, who went from Georgia. They didn't win the Natty with him, but they won the Natty right after. Then he goes to Bama. Then he goes to Texas, right? So it's like they're at the upper echelon and they're still leaving. So it's just so dumb to me, and it's not a pure science because like like Makai Hughes goes from Tulane to Oregon. They say like okay he's like they're gonna redshirt him, and like they kind of downplayed him and whatever. So who knows? I'll hold my real thought on that until next year. But then Ahmad Hardy goes from ULM, who used him more, and then goes to Missouri, and then he's the damn what do you call it? Doak Walker finalist, probably a Doak
Yes.
Walker winner. Um, so yeah, there's my rant on G5 and the transfer portal. Not
I
saying
mean,
that it doesn't affect the G5. It clearly does, but it affects everyone.
right. It's going to
And
be
winning
interesting.
national titles not end all be all. Like those teams know they're not going to win a national title, but they want a spot at the table to play. It's the same team. A 15, 16 seed in the NCAA tournament knows they're not winning the whole thing, but them getting in gives them more money to their program. Extends their NIL
Yes,
benefits. Like it's better than sitting at home and playing in a bowl game.
Right.
indeed.
I mean, what's going to benefit a program more? Is it winning a makeup national championship against other teams around the group of 5, or is
That
it
people are going to
actually
opt out.
competing? Exactly. That dude's going to opt out at the end of the day, or is it playing in meaningful bowl games that's going to elevate not just their stats, like what Ashton Gray did and Caleb Hawkins did in the New Mexico Bowl, and you see them both in the transfer portal, and you see other guys that are kind of doing the same thing, which will attract more recruits and more guys in the portal to go to these G5s and say, hey, man, we've got dudes that was on this roster from last year that balled out last year, and now they're off back to the Power 4. Hey, man, you come down here, we'll get you back in the Power 4 in less than 10 months. That's what our goal is for you, and that's what it's gonna what's gonna take for you to get into that position.
I was on. It was some space. I was on a UCF space. I said the exact words that you just said. That some of these schools, they're talking about Jack State and how like Jack State was like the most physical team they played all year, right? And some of these schools, and I guarantee Charles Kelly's doing it too. Maybe not literally like, hey, come play for 1 year, then go back up. But if you play your ass off for me for a year or whatever, like we can get you, if you need to go, we can get you to go or whatever. Because then on the back end, that's an easy recruiting tool for them because it's like, hey, Cam Cook just had a 2,000-yard year or whatever. Now, if any running back wants to be that bell cow running back, right, come to Jack State. And I will say the one guy y'all need to keep an eye on, Trey Cooley from Troy. He got hurt early in the year, took his redshirt year. Trey Cooley from Georgia Tech, now he's at Troy. That's going to be your one huge liftoff guy as long as he stays healthy going into next year. So.
Interested to see what happens in that department and really interested to see around the group of 5. Guys, I want to thank you both for hopping on in with.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, I don't see him anymore.
You guys,
there we go.
Did you guys catch that last part?
You just came back now.
Okay. Garrett Armbrust, our G5 insider, always hopping on with us here on the Southern sports scene. Scout, we need to get you back on, dude. I mean, you're supposed to be my co-host, but I mean, you have not been active whatsoever. That's
I was trying to graduate. I was trying to graduate college. My fault,
brother. Okay, did you graduate?
Yes.
Yes,
Beautiful.
You did. Congratulations. By the way, congratulations to our new graduate. Yeah, congratulations, Jacob. Garrett, you're graduating this year too, aren't you? Or are you done?
No, I'll graduate next December. I'm a little behind. So yeah.
Ain't nothing better. We got our
Go Vols.
Yes, sir.
Perfect for Garrett.
Line up, baby. But guys, I want to thank you all for hopping on Inside the Southern Sports Scene. Again, you guys are the best. I got to get to New Orleans early in the morning. I get to go talk with Trinidad Chambliss and the Ole Miss Rebels. Then I get to go talk to Gunnar Stockton and the Georgia Bulldogs following all that. So I'm going to be up early in the morning. You guys have a great rest of the week. We will be back on very soon. I don't know what specific day. We'll give you our previews and predictions for all of the bowl games that'll come up. You guys have a great rest of the day. We'll see you then. Peace.